with the click of a button, we have our update that 9 of the 28 objectives have been completed. And you can see how this is tracking the percentage and also kicking off when those criteria have been met. AI in sports science is exciting, but it also comes with a very important caveat. The output is only as good as the information you give it. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate Action Apps' new AI-generated rehab planning tool using a grade 2 biceps firm hamstring injury as an example. Now, the aim is not to replace practitioner judgment, but to show how AI can help organize the evidence, structure the plan, and support clearer return to play communication. So here we have our Action Apps practitioner portal from their athlete management system. And if you haven't already seen my videos on their AVA, their Action Apps virtual assistant, then definitely take a look at those. But for this video then, we're going to dive into the medical module. Here then in our medical module, we have our return to play athletes. We can see one of our athletes already listed, and I'm going to create a new plan for a new injury. So here I'm going to select Bruce as our athlete. Bruce is the co-founder and CEO at Action Apps, and we're going to say that he has been diagnosed with a biceps femoris hamstring grade 2 injury. And let's say that that occurred on the 11th of June. We could enter our estimated return to play date if we wanted to, if we had an idea of it. But for now, I'm just going to leave it blank and see what the plan generates without that information. Here then we have our most critical section, the diagnostic summary. And you can see in red here that this informs AI. And as we know, garbage in, garbage out. So we want to give it really informative information about this injury. Here, I've just got a paragraph, then an example of a relevant diagnosis for a biceps fem hamstring injury. You can see that we've talked about the mechanism for injury during high-speed sprinting. We talked about the clinical examination as well, and also the MRI findings. That can also be updated as and when new information comes in. But for now, this is the information that we're giving to the AI. The risk summary and the prognostic summary here then are both AI generated, so we can leave those blank for now. Next up then we come to the evidence base and methodology, and this is undoubtedly one of my favorite features within this tool. So we have a whole host here of different papers and frameworks that have been uploaded to the system. We can take a look in more detail at a summary if we want to click into those. So I think this is brilliant because, as you'll see later, these papers are not just used to evidence the outputs from the AI, but they're also then referenced specifically in the plan. So it's supporting an evidence-based approach to rehab, but also sometimes AI has been criticized for scraping together other people's work and not appropriately citing it, whereas in this case, we're utilizing the literature, but also we'll see that it is cited then later on in our rehab plan. And it's not just limited to published work from journals either. If in your team, in your club, you have an internal framework, a philosophy that you have developed, that is something that can also upload privately into your own team's accounts to also add to this evidence base. For now then, I'm just going to select a number of these papers, and AI then will use the information in them to help with its output. We can see also we've got some general methodology notes if we want to add anything, as well as here then the AI assist. If we want to add any further context that's important, because as we know, rehab needs to be individualized, individual to the specific context, the injury and the athlete. For now then, that's all the information that is needed to generate our plan. So I'll come back to the top and generate the plan. Now this is probably going to take roughly 60 seconds, and I'm going to leave it running so you can actually see it happen in real time. And I'll use this time here as well to make a point about data security and privacy, because obviously, anytime we're dealing with athlete data, but especially medical data, we need to be really cautious around the security and privacy aspect. So I asked the team at Action Apps to make sure I get this right, to kind of explain how we have that inbuilt into this system. And they have said that data security and privacy are fundamental principles of the platform's design, that it's built on the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem, and the solution leverages enterprise-grade security features, including encryption of data both in transit and at rest. And the platform is designed to support regulatory frameworks such as HIPAA by providing the technical capabilities required for the secure storage, processing, and management of protected health information. Of course, if you have any further concerns about that, you can have those discussions with Action Apps. And we saw that I didn't even get a chance to finish explaining all of that. And in that time, the report has been generated. So we can see then in our overview, in our clinical profiling, that AI has generated our risk summary and our prognosis summary. Now, clearly, these need to be verified by the practitioner, but hopefully, based on the information given and the evidence from the literature that's supporting it, that these paragraphs then would support the clinician's view, but it's all completely adjustable. So if we want to take out any part of what is said here, then we could do so. Likewise, if there was something we wanted to add, we can do so by just typing into the box. That's just a nice, quick, well-articulated summary for the clinician to use. Next, then we come to our return to play target section. And this is all based on the literature that was entered in. So we have some markers around pain, palpation, strength, and running here, as we would expect. You can see just how well set up this table is then for being flexible for all the different kind of markers that we want to use. And everything here is adjustable. That is, again, the key thing. So perhaps here we want to say, for example, that we would a 95% limb symmetry index. Again, we can go into that and adjust our target. Now, if our athletes have long-term data in the system, some of these targets will actually populate based on what their data sets are historically. And again, if any of them that we don't like at all, we can take them out altogether. And equally, we're able to add another baseline marker here along the bottom if there's something that hasn't been generated automatically for us. Next up then, we have the main part of the plan really, which is called our return to performance swim lane. So the swim lane terminology taken from process mapping systems and really breaking down the different steps within different phases of a process. You can see then that this has generated, I believe, 5 phases through this rehab. So phase 1 being acute protection and early loading, phase 2, early strength work and controlled running, phase 3, advancing that physical work, phase 4 into max velocity exposure and returning to team training, and phase 5, the return to performance and re-injury risk mitigation. Those phases are all built off of the research. Clearly, they make sense for a hamstring injury, but again, all completely adjustable should you want to change that framework. Within each phase then, we have our different domains listed, and within each, we have the intervention as well as an exit criteria that can be tracked. Once again, completely adjustable. If we want to remove one, we want to add a phase altogether, or even just a row within our phase, then we can do so. And critically, we can tick our progress once they've been done. But that's something I will come back to as well. So we have our plan. And then, of course, importantly, we have our ongoing monitoring. So once again here, we can adjust any of this that we would want to. We can tick its progress when it's done, but I really like this cadence aspect as well. It's not just a one and done. As we know with rehab, athletes progress, but they can also regress. So it's that ongoing monitoring process that we want to use throughout our rehab with our athletes. You can see how these examples are, in this case, specific to a hamstring injury. So we've got isometric knee flexion strength test at 30 and 90 degrees. So the McCall test there, eccentric hamstring force through a NordBoard or the Nordic hamstring exercise, combined with things around high-speed running and max velocity exposure on the field. But again, a very multifaceted approach, as of course rehab should be. So once we are happy, we have adjusted anything we want to with this plan, we can select to create the plan, and that will then save it here into the system. You can see that's now changed to update plan as we start tracking the progress. But I'll just show you for now then, if I scroll back to the top, you can see we've got a progress bar here. Currently, it's right at the start of the plan, so nothing has yet been completed. But I just want to then show you the visualization now that we have generated this initial plan. And you can see this lovely visualization then of the return to play report. We have our athlete and their injury, the estimated timeline and estimated return to play, and where they are at based on their objectives across the different phases. We then get a breakdown as to the percentage that has been completed in each of the phases. Now, of course, rehab is complex and it is non-linear as much as we often wish it would be. And so actually, the reality may not be that these athletes are completing 100% in phase 1 and then moving on to phase 2, 100% on that. We can actually track across the board where they're at and see that progress and equally any regression in this visualization. So let's go in now. Let's go back to the plan. Imagine we fast forwarded a little bit of time and we want to track that our athlete has completed some of the process here then, and I will check some of these. I will update the plan, and you can see then with the click of a button, we have our update that 9 of the 28 objectives have been completed, and you can see how this is tracking the percentage and also kicking off when those criteria have been met. I can also change this into a PDF. So, of course, we've all been there when our medical director, the head coach, or perhaps even your club's board has wanted an update of an athlete's rehab and how long that takes then to pull together all the information. And yet with this tool, because this is part of our tracking, this is part of our medical notes, at the click of the button then we get this view or this PDF summarizing exactly where they are at and showing not just the summary, as we talked about at the very beginning, the evidence base, as I mentioned, is clearly referenced, clearly cited to showcase the evidence base, and then an illustration really of all the various criteria that are being considered that the athlete needs to complete and exactly where they are at in their rehab. So as I can't emphasize enough, rehab then is a complex process. It's a non-linear process. And to try and handle this, we do break it down into phases, into assessments, into tracking objective markers. But of course, we still need to respect that it is complex and it is non-linear. And actually, that's been really nicely discussed and illustrated in this recent publication by Matt Habener, Tom Allen, Matt Jordan, and Daniel Cohen in this Physical Therapy in Sport article. They illustrate the non-linear and adaptive nature of rehab, framing it through this "we're going on a bear hunt" metaphor. Along with this figure as well then, which shows just how many stakeholders there are in the complex ecosystem of rehab. Now, this new Action Apps feature then is by no means overlooking that. As I said, we try to manage such a complex process by simplifying it and breaking it down. But then we also constantly need to zoom in on the detail and zoom out on the bigger picture, especially in rehab where there can be progression and regression. This feature really well supports that by showing the different markers that we're using, by enabling the tracking of those assessments. I'll be honest that when the team at Action Apps told me that they developed an AI-generated rehab tool, I myself was a little bit skeptical, a little bit concerned, but seeing just how adjustable everything is, seeing how well evidenced the system is by actually incorporating not just research papers, but potentially your own system and framework as well, definitely put me at ease and actually made me really excited by this tool because it will undoubtedly save practitioners so much time of compiling their notes, of putting together the different objective information that we collect through rehab, and from scouring the literature for all these frameworks and markers, whereas it's done here now in minutes, as you have just seen. So if you're already a client of Action Apps, then get in touch with the team to discuss how this feature can be incorporated into your system. And if you're not yet using Action Apps, their athlete management system, but you're interested to know more, then reach out to them via their website, which I'll put a link to below. And if you enjoyed this video, then like and subscribe and come back again soon for another Sports Science Insights video.